Hi, I'm Kelly with citruscycles.ca. I'm really excited to show you the MultiCharger. It's a mid-tail cargo e-bike that's the same length as a regular bike. It's made in Germany by Müller and features the German engineering, attention to detail, quality components, and a truly enjoyable rideability that you would expect from R&M. This is a mid-tail cargo e-bike with room for 2 kids on the back or lots of gear. What makes this bike exciting is that it is the same length as a regular e-bike. So it rides and handles just like a regular bike. They even make a GX version, the Grand Expedition or Grand Crossover, that comes with knobby tires and a wide gear ratio so you can ride on rougher terrains and hit the trails. So in many ways it begs the question of why wouldn't you get a bike like this instead of a regular e-bike? It's the same length as a regular e-bike but lots of room for passengers and for gear. So in this video I'm going to give you a quick overview of the MultiCharger and the MultiCharger Mixty, which is actually what this one is, along with the benefits of an e-bike like this. Then I'm going to go into the details. So if you're not interested in the details, because this is a longer video, no problem. If you don't have the time, you can skip to the ride test at the end. As you'll probably noticed, I'm passionate about e-bikes. This is how I get around. It's transportation, recreation, along with fitness for me, and I especially love the utility of cargo e-bikes, so I'm super excited to take you on a test ride in a while. But in the meantime, if you have questions, if you want to check out the detailed specs or the current pricing, you can head over to our website at citruscycles.ca. There you'll find our contact info. You can even order online with free shipping in Canada, and of course we'd love for you to stop by the store and try it out for yourself. So you can email or call for an appointment from our website. Now I should mention that I don't get paid for these video reviews. So at the end of the review I am going to talk about the things that I would change. So of course I do make a living by selling e-bikes. So if you purchase your e-bike from citruscycles.ca, either in the store or online, obviously that's going to help me out. However, my goal is to help you find an e-bike that you love, and that's why I do the videos. The MultiCharger is available in 2 frame styles. The Mixty, which I have here, which has a lower crossbar, and the regular version, which has a higher crossbar. The lower crossbar is great because it makes it really easy to get on and off, especially if you have passengers on the back here. You're not throwing your leg over the back and kicking them in the head. You can step on and off through the middle there. The only drawback is that with the Mixty you only have the possibility of the single power tube battery. It's a beautiful integration into the frame here, but with the regular frame you can actually have an optional second power pack which goes here and gives you tremendous range. The MultiCharger is a one-size-fits-all bike, but it does have the option of a longer stem for taller riders, which is a nice option. And there are 2 color options. This is the pearl white. It's also available in utility gray, and the utility gray comes with the orange front and rear racks instead of the black that you get with the pearl white. You can optionally configure your MultiCharger for passengers if you wish, like I've done here. Comes with these very cool fold up and fold down foot pegs. Stoker bars with an adjustable length here, which is awesome, and this foam removable padded cushion. Of course, you could also configure it with some very awesome pannier bags, which I will show you in a little bit, and you could install your own bags as well if you want, and there's room for 2 child seats as well. You can choose from 3 different options. You can get what they call the MultiCharger Lite and the GX Touring, both of which come with a traditional chain, cassette and derailleur. Or you can get the Vario, which is what this one is here, and that uses the Enviolo CVT powered by Nuvinci, so it's a continuously variable transmission. And with that you get this awesome Gates carbon belt maintenance free instead of a chain, so don't have to worry. It's starting to rain right now, so when I get back from my ride, even if I've gone through a lot of puddles and got the drivetrain all dirty, I don't have to worry about cleaning it because the chain is maintenance free. With the Enviolo Nuvinci CVT here, I can shift while I'm stopped, which is awesome. So while I'm stopped here, you can see a little cyclist going up a really steep hill. Because I was coming up a hill, I can just go ahead and twist that to be flatter, and now it's harder to pedal, or up the hill, easier to pedal. I can do that while I'm stopped, and of course while I'm pedaling as well. So if I've got a hill with a variable grade, it's really easy to change that. So before I get into the detailed specs and get out of the rain, I'll give you a quick overview of the rest of the features of the bike. The MultiCharger is using Bosch's most powerful drive unit. That's the Performance Line CX. It has that beautifully integrated power tube battery. It is removable. And as I mentioned, you can get an optional second power pack on the regular frame. So in addition to this lengthy rear rack here, you do get a front rack that's attached to the frame here. So when you turn, the rack doesn't move. That's great because if you put a load on there, it's not going to slosh around or fall off when you're turning, and it's also not going to negatively impact the handling of the bike. R&M includes a Thudbuster suspension seat post, an air suspension fork, a gel saddle, and ergon grips for a comfortable, safe ride. You get lights that are built in, running off of your main battery for safety, and powerful hydraulic disc brakes to, there we go, for stopping very easily. They're using a wider puncture-resistant tire. I'll get to that in a little bit. It prevents flats and gives you traction on slippery roads, which is going to be great because it's going to be wet on my way back. The tires are 26-inch, which is a bit smaller than the 27.5 or 28 used on the regular Charger, but bigger than the 20-inch that's often found on other cargo bikes. This allows them to get the center of gravity lower than, say, on a 27 or 28. And so the bike ends up being the same length as a regular bike by using the 26s. By going with the 26 instead of a 20, they're also able to handle rougher terrain a little bit better. And you've got a better attack angle for curbs and bumps and things like that. Let me put it this way. On my ride over here, the big thing that stuck out in my mind, and I think the tires and the frame geometry, it all comes together. This is a fun, sporty bike to ride. You can go trail riding. It's just like a regular bike. And yeah, cargo bikes are fun. Other cargo bikes, I'd say, yeah, it's a lot of fun, but I would say they're sporty. This can be ridden really sporty. Okay, so we've got the ABUS folding lock here, which is key-to-like to the battery, which is awesome as well. And so there's a quick overview of the bike. I'm going to go out of the rain. If you want to skip over to the ride test, you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, I'm going to go through a comparison of the different models and the detailed specs of each model. And I'll talk about how to remove the battery, talk more about the Bosch system, and do all of that for you. Before I get into the details, I just want to touch on the 3 different models available. So this is the MultiCharger Lite. It's actually the mixed version, and the Lite is actually lighter. It's 2 kilograms lighter, and it's also the least expensive model. Both the MultiCharger Lite, which is this one here, and the MultiCharger Vario, which I'll show you in a few moments, use these Schwalbe Big Bend Plus 26-inch tires. They have a high degree of puncture resistance. They have the reflective sidewall, which is great, and they're balloon tires, so it's a high volume of air at low pressure, and that can really help smooth out the ride. Now the MultiCharger Lite has an 11 to 42 tooth cassette here. But it has a 10-speed Shimano Dior, whereas if you upgrade to the Charger GX Touring, you are getting a knobbier tire, plus an 11-speed Shimano Dior XT, which is an upgraded transmission. But interestingly, the Charger GX Touring still uses that same 11 to 42 tooth cassette, just an 11-speed instead of a 10-speed. So the drivetrain is the main difference between the Vario and the Lite. As you can see, we've got the Gates carbon belt and the Enviolo powered by New Vinci continuously variable transmission. However, the Vario is also unique in that it does have the ergonomic grips compared to these ergon grips, a little bit rounder, doesn't have the palm rest area. It also has a double leg kickstand, so you can see there's a leg on either side there. Now that does mean that one of the tires is not going to be on the ground, so you can see, right now it's kind of more front heavy, so the tire's up there. If we had a load, it would be back. Whereas the Lite and the GX Touring come with this single leg kickstand here. Now you can see I've actually left the foam that came with the bike on the kickstand, and that's because when the bike gets moved backwards, that crank arm is going to move backwards, and it will collide with the kickstand if you have the kickstand down when you're moving the bike backwards. So ideally you want to put the kickstand up when you're moving the bike to avoid those kinds of problems. And of course, it'd be pretty difficult with the double leg kickstand here to move the bike with the kickstand up. So you simply put the kickstand, or sorry, the kickstand down, you put the kickstand up, and you are good to go. So it's interesting that they used two different style of kickstands depending on the model. Also, the the Vario, which is what we're looking at here, and the GX Touring do come with the Thudbuster suspension seat post. And on the Lite, to keep the price down and the weight down, they just use a regular seat post. Now, of course, you could also change that if you wanted to a Thudbuster. Back to the drivetrain idea, just to kind of summarize what I talked about before. With the Vario, we do have this maintenance-free Gates belt, so there's no, you don't have to clean it or oil it or keep it lubricated, do adjustments. It's you know, essentially maintenance-free. And of course, with this NVLO hub, as I showed you before, you do have that ability to shift while stopped, which is great. Also while you're pedaling, and if you've got a hill with a variable grade, you can very easily just kind of adjust that. It's so intuitive. The cyclist going up the hill makes it easier to pedal, and flatter makes it harder to pedal. So a lot of our customers really love that, especially with cargo. If you've got a passenger or something like that, sometimes you're really focused on the road around you and not so much on remembering to gear down and that sort of thing, and you don't have to do that with the NVLO. We've got a nice full-length belt guard on the Vario, and on the Lite we do also have a bit of a chain guard and a chain cover there, so you don't have to worry about getting grease on your pants. And this is the MultiCharger GX Touring. It's in the utility gray, which has the orange accents for the front rack and the rear rack. And I've set up this one with the optional cargo bags. These are massive cargo bags, 33 liters per side, and they attach to the rack here, and they've got lots of configurable options here. We even have this fold-down tray, so if you're wanting to haul really large stuff, you can do that. It's got a roll top to make sure that everything stays safe and secure inside. We've got lots of very clever features. We've got compartments inside, mesh compartments, zipper compartments, Velcro compartments. We even have a key fob here with a clip, so you can just clip that off and on to get your keys in and out of there. So lots of versatility with these bags. Lots of thought went into it to make sure that they're really very useful for you, and fold up nice and small on the side there when you're not using them, but certainly have a large capacity for when you do want to go somewhere with them. Put a lot of stuff in there. This is the regular frame, so you can see we now have the optional second battery. This is the power pack, so we still have the power tube inside the frame here. It's removable, of course, and then we have the optional second battery, the power pack, right here, and that's a configurable option. Of course, you can ride the bike without the second battery if you wish. You just put the plug that's included over the cover. So with the GX Touring, there's a few changes compared to the other models. We get the Smart Sam Plus tires. These are great tires. They are e-bike specific. The new Addix compound from Schwalbe, the Performance Green Guard, so it has a high degree of puncture resistance. What I really like about these tires is the tread pattern. So you can see we've got a lot of knobs here, so that if you are doing trails, off-road riding, you're going to get the traction and control that you need on gravel, on mud, on sand, and that sort of thing. But when you're riding on the pavement, you can see they've really put those knobs run together here down the center, and so you're not seeing a huge amount of rolling resistance, because when you're running on pavement, you're kind of really only running on the center of the tire here. But when you start cornering or getting into loose material, then those knobs come into play. So I really like that tire design. That makes this, the GX, the Grand Expedition version of the MultiCharger, lets you just go anywhere that you want to go. And another way that they've done that is they've upgraded the cassette here. This is an 11-speed, the Dior XT. So, very top-end Shimano drivetrain with fairly large climbing gear here, so you can climb some pretty steep hills. And of course, to do that, we have a chain instead of the belt like we see on the Vario model. And another little change we see is the grips here. These are the Ergon, more performance-oriented rather than the comfort-oriented grips found on the Vario, and that's again keeping kind of in this idea that this is a Grand Expedition bike. You might be going off-roading with it, that sort of thing, and so you'll be changing your riding position, and you may want to have grips that support that, depending on, you know, if you're descending or climbing or that sort of thing. Otherwise, most of the rest of the features are the same, but of course with this higher crossbar with the regular frame, we do have the option of the dual batteries, which is great for the extended range. Now all three models have a very similar riding position. You can see they use a relatively flat stem. On the Vario here it's quite flat. On the Light it's a little bit more elevated, but they're both you know, very wide mountain bike style bars, a little bit of rise, not much sweep in them. And you know, when you're ordering, I should mention, you can actually order the bike with a longer stem if you're taller. So if you want to stretch yourself out a little bit, you can order that with a longer stem, and of course we could switch that out for you as well. So they are fairly wide, they're flat bars, and so what this does is normally it's going to put you in a fairly forward, stretched out riding position. And that can be a good thing because it gives you more control over your bike. But what's really interesting is that with these 26-inch tires, I find that everything feels a little bit lower because, well, I'm used to a taller tire. But I'm not really uncomfortably stretched out because the bars do feel a little bit closer to me and to the saddle than on a regular bike. And I think that might be a function of the idea that the bike is the same length as a regular bike, but we've got this, you know, rack that's very elongated, and then smaller tires, 26-inch tires. So somehow that kind of gives you this really interesting effect that at first when you come and you ride it, and you may think, oh, well, you know, this is strange. But, you know, anything different will feel strange at first. And so I found when test riding that different and strange isn't actually bad. In fact, I really like the riding position. It feels fun, it feels sporty. It's a joy to ride in a way that still makes me feel very confident in handling the bike on difficult terrain. So it's a little bit different, but it's really fun. I really enjoy the riding position on the MultiCharger. So speaking of handling difficult terrain, we do have the Suntour XCR32 suspension fork. It is an air fork, so that means we do have the ability to adjust the air based on your weight or preferences, and this is really going to help keep you safe in your ride because it's going to help you to handle the bike easier in difficult terrain. We do have a lockout though if you want to stiffen it up, but I really enjoy riding with it open. It helps to make a smoother, more comfortable ride and also a safer ride. We do have reflectors on there, which also contributes to safety, which is great to see. And of course we are using a through axle, which makes this very, very sturdy, very stiff. You're not worried about things coming loose in your wheel giving way. It is a quick release. We've just got a lever over there on the side. This is Suntour's QL2, I believe, and so you just open that up, turn this just a little bit. You don't have to unthread everything, and then pull the axle right through, and that's going to keep you safe. Speaking of other safety features, we do have the Magura MT4 hydraulic disc brakes. So that are the levers up here, and you can see we can adjust the reach with a metric Allen key there if you want to bring these bars a little bit, the levers a little bit closer to the bars. Being a hydraulic disc brake, that means you're not relying on the strength of your hands to stop the bike, and that's really important if you have a passenger or loaded up with a lot of cargo. E-bikes, of course, are heavier. You've got the motor, you've got the battery in there. You're going to be going at possibly higher speeds, and so you can pick up a fair bit of speed down the hill. You want to make sure you can stop. And so with the hydraulic brakes, it's similar to what you have in your car. You're not using the strength of your foot to stop the car. That would be a little crazy. And so same with the bike. You're not actually using the strength of your fingers. You're relying on the hydraulics to stop the bike. And so not only are hydraulic brakes safer because they're easier to stop a heavier bike, the other cool thing is that the brake pads are self-adjusting. So as they wear, because of course it's a wear item, just like in your car, the brake pads will wear over time, they're going to actually self-adjust so that they're closer and closer to the rotor as they wear, so that you're not going to really notice a loss of performance. And that's really great because, of course, with a cable-activated brake, not only you're going to have to use a lot of your hand strength to stop the bike, but the cable can stretch and needs adjustments over time. And other safety features, we have these integrated lights, both the front and the rear. On the rack here, we've got reflectors in there, and the lights are integrated. Their wiring is run to the main battery and through the frame, so you don't have to worry about the wiring getting snagged on anything, and you don't have to worry about remembering to bring your lights along or charge them, because they are going to run off of the main battery light. This is the Supernova. I think that is the E3 e-bike light. It's quite bright. I wouldn't mind if they actually added a side cutout in there. There isn't one, but even when you do have it on, there is a fair bit of bleed through the side there, so you do have some side visibility. And of course we have these reflective sidewall stripes as well. It's really cool the way they mounted it up high like this on the bars, so that as you turn, of course, the light's going to shine where you're heading, which is a good thing. And we've got an adjustable angle on here that you can easily access while you're up front. Now you may be wondering, well, you know, perhaps it would have been better to put it under the rack, and I could see that argument. But keep in mind, this rack only has a 3 kilo maximum capacity, so you probably don't want to be stacking too much height up on there anyways. So the light shouldn't be a problem, but I imagine that we could relocate it for you if that were a concern. But it is nice to have them built in and running off of the main battery. Now, in addition to keeping you safe, the bike also comes with a lock to keep the bike safe. So on the Vario and the GX Touring, you get this ABUS folding lock. You just release that there, and it flips right out from the bike, which is really handy. It's nice to have a mounting point. You know, a lot of times people get a really secure lock and then don't use it or don't bring it along because it's inconvenient. This is great because you've got this mounting point here. It's not in your way. It's always going to be with you. Very convenient. In fact, it even uses the same key as you use to remove the battery for charging the battery. So super convenient. You'll always have that key with you. Fairly strong though. These are metal bars coated in rubber, of course, to protect your frame. So yeah, it folds up nice and small, but it also unfolds and makes it really easy to be able to, you know, wrap this around your frame, maybe the seat post here, and then around whatever you're locking it to, and then folds back up to simply put back on the bike like that. So that's the ABUS Bordeaux folding lock, which comes with the Vario and the GX Touring, and on the light it comes with the ABUS frame lock. And actually I really like frame locks. Again, same key that we use for the battery, and when you put the key in and turn it, a metal bar is going to come right through here, through the rim and spokes, and that's going to prevent somebody from riding off with your bike, because of course they can't move the rear wheel. But of course somebody could pick up your bike and walk off with it, and to that end, on the other side over here, there we go, you can see there's a little port there. And so we have these chains from ABUS, and you know, it's a hardened steel chain wrapped in nylon to protect your frame or whatever you're locking it to. The cool thing about this is, you know, chains are, you know, can be very secure, but they can also be really heavy. This chain isn't too bad weight-wise because there's no locking mechanism. This goes into the port here and uses the same locking mechanism that's used in the frame lock. So you've got, again, the same key for the frame lock and the battery and for the chain, because the chain is going right into this port here, and you wrap it around whatever you're locking it to, and now the bike is secure. It can't be picked up or moved away, and it also can't be ridden away. So I've touched on the front rack here. It does have a lower capacity 3 kilo maximum, which is interesting that it's rated that low, because the rack is actually mounted onto the frame, and when you turn, the rack doesn't move as you turn. Now, that can be disconcerting when you ride it. At first, it takes a little bit of getting used to, because it almost feels like you're not turning. You know, if you're up here and you're riding along and there's your front wheel and you turn, and your brain's saying, well, I'm not turning because the front of the bike isn't moving. So yeah, it takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's a good thing, because it means when you turn, your load isn't tilting over with the front wheel and impacting on the handling. So if you have, you know, some weight there and every time you turn it follows with you, that can make the bike a little bit more difficult to handle. So it's nice having the rack mounted to the frame like this. It's very, you know, very sturdy. I'm a little bit confused why it only has a 3 kilo max, because it's really well secured to the bike. Quite a robust rack here. There isn't any sides on it or anything, so you are going to need to strap on whatever you're bringing with you, and you'll want to keep it clear of the light there. Now, one of the nice things as well about the setup with the way that they've designed the bike is that we do have this block lock here on the headset. So that means when you're using, say the double kickstand like this, and you've got a heavy load on the back there, your front wheel, although it can only turn a certain distance, it can only go that far. That block lock is actually preventing it from turning even further and causing maybe the forks to hit the frame, or just to upset the balance of the bike. So I like having that block lock on the front. On the back, I've also already kind of talked about the rear rack here. It is what we'd call a mid-tail. You could put a couple of child seats back on there, and this is you can get it, of course, with this passenger kit, as I've talked about already, with the padding and the stoker bars and the foot pegs. But of course you could also add a child seat if you wanted to. You can get those really impressive bags I showed you, but you could put your own bags on here. There's enough room for 4 bags, so that's a lot of room on there. You can use any bags. You don't have to use the R&M ones, although I really like the R&M ones. Now here's an interesting thing. The overall capacity for the bike is 160 kilos, and you can only put 60 kilos on the rack, and that seems a little bit low compared to other bikes, and I'm not sure if they're maybe using a different rating system or why they've gone with such a low estimate as to what you can put on there. Obviously, I'm not going to recommend to you that you exceed that. Do other people do that? Probably, but that's the recommended maximum for this. The other interesting thing is that they've set this up with the passenger kit here. This is obviously for a little bit of older passenger. If you've got a younger passenger that fits in a child seat, that's obviously going to be better. And we do see some other manufacturers doing, and maybe R&M will come out with something, or a third party will come out with, some sort of bars, monkey bars or clubhouse, or whatever you want to call it, that come out to help kind of keep a child that's, say, in between a child seat and not ready to hang on by themselves. You've got that kind of thing that you could install on some of the other long tails that are on the market. Now, what the interesting thing about that is I always tell customers when they get that, keep in mind that although there's the advantage of maybe you worrying that your child isn't going to fall off, the problem with those bars is that they do actually encourage children to shift their weight from side to side and not to really stay centered, and that can impact on the handling. So I found, with my kids that we were able to, very easily have them get used to the idea of hanging on and kind of staying balanced, and it was not a problem. And obviously that's a personal choice for you whether or not you need those bars. If you need those bars, well, the MultiCharger is not going to work out for you, because you either need a child seat or you need the stoker bars for them to hang on to. And it's the same idea, again, for R&M, probably they're looking at the transition saying, look, when a child doesn't need to be in the child seat anymore, they can probably hang on, and they can probably avail themselves of the foot pegs here. But again, other, kind of long tail bikes on the market, and again, we're looking at a mid-tail here, we're looking at a size, it's the same size as a regular bike. But if you look at some of the long tails on the market, then they'll have, full-length footboards or footrests for kids, and they'll have, wheel skirts as well, although, it'd be hard, but it's not undoable to put your feet in there. And again, I imagine that, kind of the thought process here as well, if a child's prone to putting their feet in the wheels, they're probably in a child seat, and that's not going to happen. Once they're grown out of the child seat, they probably have the ability, to kind of not stick their feet in there. But, again, you would know better for your children. And so if you're thinking, yeah, I really need a wheel skirt, well, maybe a different bike, or, put a couple pannier bags on here, or use the R&M bags and actually have the child put their feet inside the bag or around the bag. And, those bags, that's what Tern does with their GSD. They don't have a wheel skirt. They just say, look, put the pannier bags on, and that will block them. So, that's something to think about if you're thinking about this primarily as transport. Kind of think about for passenger, what the needs of your passenger will be. Okay, and while we're back here, I did speak about the Thudbuster suspension seat post. On the Vario and the GX Touring, we have this Sailor Royale moderate looking saddle. It's actually quite comfortable, got a bit of gel in there. On the light, we go with the Sailor Royale Shadow saddle, which also has a little bit of gel and is quite comfortable. All the bikes do come with a quick release. A lot of R&M bikes come with not with a quick release. I think that they're thinking, you know, this is something that multiple riders are going to ride, but of course we could change that if you were worried about your seat post being stolen, but certainly it does allow multiple riders to make easy adjustments. We've got fenders, of course, on all the models, the SKS plastic fenders. They're really well mounted. R&M does a good job of mounting them to the fork here with a couple of stays and up at the bridge there, and same on the back. So they're not really flopping around. They give you full coverage. They work quite well. I gotta say, I'm happy with the pedals on the Vario model here. These are ones that I would probably not change. And usually I change the pedals that come with the bike because, well, you know, the manufacturer didn't know what my preferences were going to be, so they kind of just put standard pedals. But I like these because they have these pins here. They're fairly wide, and they're going to help me make sure that my foot doesn't slide off. With the light, if it were me, I'd probably change the pedals myself because they don't have pins, and I like that. But having said that, some people really don't like having pins because, of course, you know, if you hit the pedal with your shins, you might get cut up and bruised, and that's not going to be very fun, whereas this is, you know, a little bit more forgiving. So again, that's a matter of personal preference, and you can decide what you would like to do. Those are easy things to change, of course, as are changing the saddle and the grips, and any of those other comfort things are easy to change. Okay, so I've talked about all the bike features about the MultiCharger. Let me get into the Bosch system here. We are using Bosch's top-end performance line CX. That means you not only get all the advantages of a mid-drive, so the weight is better balanced, easier to change a flat tire. Primarily, the biggest advantage of a mid-drive, of course, is that you are leveraging your mechanical advantage of your transmission, of your drivetrain. So in the case of the Enviolo New Vinci hub here, it means when you change your gear ratio to make it easier to climb up hills, it's also making it easier for the motor. If we're looking at the light here, you know, you change your gears into one of these big climbing gears, that impacts directly on the motor. Whereas if you had a hub motor in the back here, the hub motor doesn't then have any thing to do with the chain. It's turning the wheel, and so when you change gears, has no impact on the motor. With the mid-drive, as soon as you change gears, impacts directly on the motor. That's going to make it easier to get up the hills. And speaking of getting up the hills, a lot of times people ask about the wattage rating of the motor, but what they really probably care most about is the torque rating, because torque is what gets you up the hills. So with the Bosch CX, we actually get 75 Newton meters of torque. So Bosch has 3 different drive units. This one gives you the maximum amount of torque, and that's what's going to get you up the hill. So it's really nice to have that. Another thing that I like about the CX drive, very responsive. So it's actually measuring your torque, that is how hard you're pedaling, your cadence, that is how quickly your legs are spinning, and the speed of the bike 1,000 times per second. So it's basically reading your mind. And Bosch actually leverages that on the CX drive to have this really cool mode called EMTB. So you can see on the compact Pure on display here, I've got my speed, the level of assistance, and the battery life. My lights are on. I just press the plus to go up to Eco. Eco gives me 50% of my input power. So like I said, it's actually measuring your torque, your cadence, and your speed 1,000 times per second. So basically it's reading your mind, knows what you're doing, and says, oh, I'll give you another 50% boost. On Tour, it's going to give you 120% boost. When you go to EMTB, Bosch originally designed this for mountain bikes. If you're riding this on a trail, on a mountain bike trail, the last thing you want to be doing is adjusting your levels as you ride. You really want to be focused on the trail and being safe. So Bosch designed this to automatically adjust. So you start pedaling hard, because that's what you do when you see a big hill. It's going to give you maximum power, turbo power, so to speak, 300% or higher. And then when you get to the top of the hill, you ease off the pedaling because you've got a little bit of challenge ahead of you. You just want to go lighter. It senses that you're pedaling lighter and automatically moves the power down to, say, maybe a Tour level, 120%. Now, of course, this doesn't change. It's very dynamic, very progressive. It knows what you need and dynamically adjusts to that. Now, maybe you're not going mountain biking, no problem. You may still want that mode enabled because it means that when you see a hill, pedal hard, gives you full power, and you don't have to worry about remembering to turn it off of turbo at the top of the hill and kind of depleting your battery more quickly. But if you prefer and you want us to reprogram it for you, there is a USB port here on the side. Now with the Pure On display, you can't use it for anything other than programming. It doesn't charge a USB device, but we can reprogram it so that it says Sport instead of EMTB, and it's just another level between Tour and Turbo. So we do have R&M went with the compact Pure On display here. It's not removable. It's a little bit more crash resistant, very straightforward, very simple. It uses a removable battery, so eventually it'll warn you that your battery's low, and there's a couple of watch size batteries that you'll put in there to replace those. Very straightforward. I press and hold the plus key to turn the lights on and off, and press and hold the minus key to cycle through my information here. So there's my trip, and of course there's only two buttons on the side here, so if you had to guess, to reset that you would press and hold them both. So press and hold plus and minus, and now my trip is reset. The other piece of data, of course, can't be reset. That's the total distance on the bike, 25 kilometers. And your range is dynamically calculated based on the last few kilometers that you rode and your current battery status. So if I increase to turbo, you can see that my range will drop fairly significantly. If I go down to eco, it's going to increase, and it's going to dynamically adjust and calculate that as you ride. So that's really handy to have. We do have two other buttons on the display besides the plus and the minus here. We do have a power button at the top here and a walk button at the bottom here. Now, fortunately, if I press it right now, I don't have to worry the bike's not going to leave on me because what happens is it says walk, press plus. Walk plus. So that tells me now if I press and hold the plus button, the bike is going to move along at a walking speed, typically 4 or 5 kilometers an hour, and all I have to do is keep clear of the pedals, because obviously I don't want to collide with those, and simply steer the bike. And that's really useful if you've got a heavy load and you're in a pedestrian area or getting off the ferry, they don't want you riding up the ferry ramp. Well, you can just use the walk mode and point to your bike and away you go. So that's the Pure On display from Bosch. We've got, of course, like I said, the CX drive, and we've got a Bosch power tube battery. So we can charge that battery with this handy little charging port here. It's nicely sealed. Or you can remove the battery from the bike and bring it inside to charge it. Let me grab the key and show you how that removal process works. Now I should mention, this is a Bosch standard power tube battery. It's not something that R&M designed themselves. In fact, Bosch won't allow a manufacturer to use their own batteries, and I think part of that is because it ensures that should you need a replacement well into the future, you know that Bosch will have them. If every bike manufacturer made their own batteries and changed them from time to time, it'd be hard knowing that that manufacturer many years from now will still have a spare. And so it's nice knowing that Bosch has got you covered with that. And they do some clever things like when they've upgraded batteries, they've made them backwards compatible and that sort of thing. So I'm going to put the key in here. I'm first going to open up the little rubberized flap here, which protects the battery. I love this actually, by the way. It makes it so easy to remove the battery. You can see it's in there. It's even got a carrying handle, which is unusual. A lot of manufacturers that are using this Bosch power tube battery actually put an aluminum plate on the battery that's kind of screwed into the battery. Challenge with that is sometimes when things don't line up and it's hard to get in and out of there, it's a bit of a struggle. And also, of course, that can easily get damaged. So I love having this protective cover on here. Keeps it nice and clean and safe. And again, really easy to remove the battery, line it up and put it back on. Again, this is just a Bosch battery. It's not an R&M battery. And so now I turn the key and I don't have to worry about the battery falling out. See, it comes to first position, but it's not going to fall out. I can tug on it, it's not going to come out. I have to press the button here. Once I press the button, then I can remove the battery from the frame, bring it inside and charge it if I want. And to put it back in, I simply get it all lined up there and slide it in and it'll latch back in. So now that I've covered all the details in depth, I'm going to take you on a ride test. Hopefully I've opened up the possibilities of how the MultiCharger could be the ideal e-bike for you, since it isn't really any longer than a regular bike, but gives you the ability to bring cargo or passengers, go on-road or off-road, and with that dual battery option, you can go on really long rides. It's going to be very safe and very comfortable. But if this isn't the the best fit for you, head over to our website at citruscycles.ca. We've got lots of other video reviews and other options. I'm also happy to answer your questions. So if you're looking at this and maybe I didn't explain something very clearly, didn't make much sense, or you have questions or something I missed, you can find our contact information on our website at citruscycles.ca. There you'll also find current pricing and the ability to order online. So if you want to support what we're doing here in terms of doing these videos, you can certainly buy your bike online. We're happy to offer free shipping to most places in Canada. So I'll take you on the ride test, and I'm also going to see if I can get a passenger to come join me as well later in the ride test video. So it's a great day for a ride test here in Ladysmith on Vancouver Island. It's pouring rain and I've got all my rain gear on. I like doing tests like this when I can in the pouring rain, because it means the roads are going to be slippery and it's going to be a good opportunity to test out these tires and the brakes and just see how the bike handles in adverse conditions. If you're like me, you know, the bike is my primary means of transportation, so just because it's raining doesn't mean I'm going to stop riding. And so I do need to make sure that I have a bike that's going to handle all sorts of different weather and different conditions. And so far I'm really happy. You know, we've got the fenders that are doing their job. One of the things I really like about the MultiCharger Vario is we're using that Gates carbon belt. So I'm going to ride to work in the rain, I'm going to ride home in the rain, and I'm going to get home and I don't have to worry about you know, wiping down my chain and cassette, and cleaning it and re-lubricating it so that it doesn't rust. With that belt, I can just get home and relax. So the riding position is really interesting on the MultiCharger because it's fairly upright, which is what you want if you're commuting and you want to make sure that you have good visibility around you and that you're well seen. It's also very comfortable, but it's not quite as upright. You know, it's got fairly wide bars, a little bit of a rise, but not too much of a sweep in them. And that puts me in a little bit of a upright and forward riding position. The stem here is actually fairly close. It's part of how they got the bike to be the length of a regular bike despite having the extra cargo space. And that actually works really well. What that does is it gives me a lot of control over the bike. So because I've got these wider bars, you know, fairly flat, I feel like this is something I could definitely go off-roading with and still be able to control the bike without any problems. So I do like the way that they've kind of made it comfortable. We've got the ergonomic grips and everything, but also, you know, very maneuverable. So wet roads here, I'm going to do some slaloming. And no problem with these tires gripping so far, and again, lots of control over the bike. One of the challenges I always have here is trying to signal and just use one brake lever, and the brakes are powerful enough as able to do that. That's good, lots of modulation in those Magura brakes. You know, no concerns about stability or control or traction, you know, going down hills and cornering and things like that in adverse weather. And that's important. You want to feel really comfortable with your bike. So I'm pedaling past 44 kilometers an hour there. I'm going to pedal down this hill just to get an idea of the gearing of the bike. I do have a 380% gear ratio, and by changing the teeth count on the front and rear sprocket, you can kind of adjust where that ratio hits. So I'm doing over 50, 55. And really, once I got to about 55, and my legs are spinning pretty quick, but up till there I was actually able to provide a lot of input to the bike. So that's tells you, you know, you can go very fast on this bike if you want. The flip side of that may be the climbing capabilities. Is, will I have a low enough gear? And so far I'm doing just fine. I'm not in the lowest gear. Of course, this isn't an incredibly steep hill, so we'll find another steep hill later. What this hill is long. So I'm going to boost it up with the turbo. Yeah, no problem climbing this one now. Not anywhere near my lowest gear ratio, and flying up just fine. These tires are actually quite efficient. So I found I was able, even for a 26-inch tire, I was able to hit about 55, 56 going down that hill. And that's pretty typical. Some bikes I can hit up to about 60, but often they're a heavier bike, and that can make some of the difference. Okay, don't need to be in turbo anymore. You know, it didn't take me long to get used to that front rack. Of course, it doesn't move when you steer, which is a good thing. It's not going to dump your load when you're cornering. Although you don't want to put anything too heavy out there. I think, I don't know if it's the shape of it or the fact that it's down lower like that, it just doesn't seem to bother me at all. For some people it can be a bit visually confusing that you're turning and the rack is going in the same direction the bike is, instead of turning with the wheel. I definitely appreciate this belt guard. It's great. I've got my rain pants on, which are a little bit and the cuffs, I need to cinch them tighter so they're kind of flapping around and I don't have to worry about them getting caught in the belt. The flat section there, not a problem to kind of hit that 32 km/h without having to work at it too hard in the Tour EMTB mode. Feels like a very responsive bike. It's I definitely don't notice the length at all when I'm cornering. You know, I'll go through some gates up ahead, and it just, well, I guess it is the length of a regular bike, so that's probably why it feels like that. But it feels like a very fun bike. This is a bike, you know, that you could ride all day and really enjoy it because it is quite comfortable. Squeaky brakes because of the rain, and that's normal. That new Vinci system, of course, I didn't have to downshift before I stopped. I was able to just do that after coming to a stop, which is great on a commuter bike or a bike you're using as a cargo bike, maybe a passenger or even some gear. You can really focus on the road and things around you rather than necessarily having to focus on the bike things like being in the right gear. Alright, we'll head down a fairly steep hill here. And no problem with the brakes, lots of stopping power. Able to lock up my rear wheel there, but there's enough modulation that I don't have to. Suspension fork's doing well on curves and things like that. It is an air fork, so it's nice that you're able to adjust that according to your weight and the load of the bike and the riding conditions. Got some gates here. This is where it's nice to have a bike that's the same length as a regular bike. Nice to have this light as well. Need to tighten that up a little bit. It uses the Torx wrench. There we go. And yeah, here's some gates. And again, it just rides like a regular bike. I'm not worried about that length that I would normally have with a cargo bike. The suspension and the tires do a really good job over the train tracks, so rail lines aren't a problem. I'll hit some potholes up ahead. Again, pretty close to 50 coming down that hill and still able to pedal comfortably. So you can definitely go fast on this bike if you wish. I may head back up that hill just to do a hill test. It's a very steep hill. Not sure if the GPS will be accurate. I've got a GPS built into the camera. It should overlay the gradient on the screen. but a lot of times we lose the GPS signal through the tunnel. But usually, and there's usually a little bit of lag as well, and the speed won't be accurate because it's measuring the overall horizontal distance rather than the actual distance I'm going on hills for some reason. So this little bit of a hill, no problem. Put it into turbo, make it a little bit of a easier gear on the NVLO system there. Very easy. Yeah, that maneuverability is really great. So if you're riding in the city, bringing a passenger or some gear along and you're wanting something that you're not going to have to worry about getting through gates and things like this, or traffic, cars, is definitely a great bike. I am enjoying these tires, the Big Ben Plus. Balloon tires are great. They just really smooth out the ride. They give you this great floaty sensation, but still handle really, really well. So I guess it's cushioning perhaps instead of floaty. Okay, here's the big hill. We've got it up into turbo. And the nice thing about this NVLO system with the continuously variable transmission is when you have a hill with variable grade, I can adjust it. So I'm hovering about 10 kilometers an hour on this hill. The Bosch CX drive, of course, gives me lots of torque. Torque is what we need for climbing the hill, so that's in abundance. I can tell the hill's getting a little less steep now because I can actually gear up to a higher gear, so no problem on that hill. If you've got steep hills like that, you'll have the gear ratio, and of course, you know, no doubt you'll have the power from the Bosch CX drive to get you up there. It's just whether or matter or not the gearing will work. I didn't have any problems on that hill down into my lowest gear. Now, if I had, you know, that 60 kilos on the back rack, obviously that's going to make a little bit more work. So I'll try to do some ride tests with a passenger, and I still, you know, obviously I think I'd be going a little bit slower than that 10 kilometers an hour, but I'd still make it up, no problem. I'm missing the clock on the Intuvia display. The bike comes with the Purion display. There's a number of reasons why a manufacturer would do that, and most people are fine with it. Actually, it's a really nice display. The numbers are nice and big, very compact. Buttons easy to reach and control, but it doesn't show me the time or my trip time, and I'm used to seeing those stats on my other bikes that I ride. Perhaps it's a good thing. Maybe I need to learn. I'm concerned about the time when I'm riding my bike and just enjoy it. Of course, because you're using that Purion display, there is room on the handlebars to mount your phone or something like that. Cruising along on tour here, very comfortable. Again, great comfort on the riding position here. Now onto some gravel, broken pavement, potholes. Good test of the suspension and the tires. There we go, hit some potholes, and definitely the thud buster works really well. Combination of the suspension fork helping to smooth things out in the front, and the thud buster kind of reducing some of those hits in the back seems to work quite well. And of course the balloon tires also absorb a fair bit. So let me do some quick maneuvering here on loose gravel, no problem. Do some braking. Obviously very squeaky from the being wet in the rain. Lock up the rear wheel fairly easily, but I don't have to. There we go. and no problem with traction from the tires when I'm braking. Not really seeing a lot of dive in the front fork when braking either, so that's good. No problems. So it's nice knowing that you know, on an e-bike you're going to be traveling at higher speeds. It's nice knowing that you're going to be safe, you know, comfortable of course as well, but when you're riding through rough terrain, potholes, it's nice knowing that you don't have to swerve and avoid things, and you know, that makes you unpredictable in traffic and more likely to, you know, anything that's disruptive to your riding is not great. So it's nice knowing with this bike you can kind of just keep powering through things. Over that 32 kilometers an hour there again, and not feeling really any drag. I mean, I know theoretically there is some and people will talk about that. I'm not really noticing it. Just good. Another hill, put it up to turbo. A very easy climb. I keep adjusting that light because it's loose. I'll tighten that up. But it is actually nice having it right there so I can adjust it. I find, you know, obviously when you turn, it shines where you're going to go, which is great. But I find on hills a lot of times I need to adjust the angle to get a little higher or lower to see up the hill or down the hill, and it's nice being able to just grab it there and do that. Again, that New Vinci system, or Inviolo as it's now called, is great because I didn't have to worry about downshifting before I stopped. I just put it into an easier gear to get me going. So it's hard to see any downsides to this bike compared to, say, the regular Charger. It's, you know, you've got that extra loading capacity for stuff or for passengers. It handles really well, it rides really well, it's very comfortable. You feel a little bit lower, but you get used to it right away. But if I switch back and forth between the Charger and this bike, yeah, the 26-inch tires versus the 27.5 do become apparent. But that really doesn't seem to make a difference as far as handling or anything like that goes, or comfort. Rolls quite well, climbs very readily. So if you have any questions, you want to come try it for yourself, you can head over to our website at citruscycles.ca. There you'll find the pricing. You can order online. We offer free shipping anywhere in Canada.